Hello everyone, standing in front of you is Mr. O Tau from Nkangala TVET College, a tourism lecturer in the NCV department. I'm going to be presenting a lesson on sustainable tourism level 3. My main focus will be on module 7, 8 and 9. Basically we are wrapping up topic 1 and we'll only be left with topic 2 after this. Prior to this module, you must have done module 1 to module 6 in the textbook. So if you have already passed this stage, it's important that you can just go back and join us as part of your revision. For today's lesson, we are going to be looking at 3 main outcomes, and the first one is that at the end of this lesson you should be able to recognize the different types of heritage and to describe them and to explain them. You should be able to use your understanding of heritage, to enhance performance in the workplace or in any environment. You should also be able to recognize your own place in South African heritage context. The first module that we're going to look at is module 7, which talks about recognizing the different types of heritage. And in this module, if you can check, we are on page 69 of your Macmillan student textbook. In this module, we're going to be looking at 2 major learning outcomes, which is the comparison between natural and cultural heritage, and secondly, the comparison between tangible and non-tangible or intangible heritage. So the first thing that we need to look at is what heritage is. As we may all know, as level 3 students, we came into terms with the definition of tourism in level 2, and we basically, the definition of heritage in level 2, and we basically described heritage simply as something that reminds us of where we come from. It can also be defined as something that is or can be inherited by us as people, such as our cultures, traditions, or also anything that is important that can be handed down. It can include a family's professional history. For example, if you're a traditional healer passing on the skill from a parent to a child, if you're a farmer teaching your child or your son how to farm, that can also form part of heritage. Religious affiliations, normally we go to churches that we grew up in, and our children and their children's children might also go into those same churches that we grew up in as young people and as we get older. Also, our cultural traditions form part of heritage because they define who we are and where we come from. According to SouthAfricanHistory.org, it's not only considered to be made of practices and traditions that are passed on from parents to children, but also to do with what has been passed on by the family or extended family, uncles and aunts, by the community where you live, and also by the general place in which you were raised or where you grew up. For a community, for example, you could think about pastors, teachers, friends, peers, or anyone else who had influence in your life. Please take a second to look at the following video that is going to give us a further description or definition of heritage.
Heritage means identity. It means things that have been passed down to me. It means language. It means culture.
It's the good stuff of where you come from.
A South African heritage is the Eastern Cape. It's the smell of the bush, it's the aloes, it's the valleys, it's the rivers, it's the hills, and it's the people of the Eastern Cape with their funny accent.
How vibrant we are, our rhythm, how friendly and caring we are. That's where Ubuntu comes from.
Heritage is being able to go to amazing cultural places in a place which is relatively new in terms of history, in terms of the Western world.
Freedom of expression is very important, knowing what you want in life, going for your goals, loving other people. And I think that's my heritage right now. It's also about what I inherit, not only from my family, but from the people in my space.
I suppose the Zulu word that best describes heritage is imvelaphi, which means where do you come from? You can't go anywhere in the future if you don't know where you come from in the past.
We all have so many different pasts in this country that we almost have greater freedom of choice to decide in which direction we're actually going to go.
I do believe that I strive to be a global citizen. I think that when we start having a sense of our own uniqueness, that's what breeds superiority, and I think that's what leads to division. So we need to see ourselves as part of the human chain.
To me, heritage means understanding people's values. Once you understand their way of doing things, you understand who they are.
All right, moving on, we're going to look at the first type of heritage. The first type of heritage that we have, ladies and gentlemen, is natural heritage, which has to do with all the things that were created by God, which means that natural heritage comes from all the things that we find on earth. It has to do with the natural world, which includes animals, plants, features such as estuaries, islands, caves, and any land formations that we can find out there. South Africa's natural heritage encompasses all the natural features that people associate with our country or our nation. So everything that is within the borders of South Africa that is of significant importance, be it cultural, mountains, rivers, dams, whatever it is, as long as it is natural, forms part of South Africa's natural heritage. So let's look at some of the examples that we may have of a natural heritage. Firstly, a country's natural heritage is its beautiful environment, such as natural resources like gold and water. If we look at specific tourism or heritage attractions that are related to the tourism industry, you could think of Table Mountain, which is one of the most famous attractions that we have in the country. Think of Kengo Caves, the Fynbos biome, the Karoo biome, or the big 5 animal species that we have in our country. Here's an example of Table Mountain, the Kengo Caves, the big 5, the Fynbos biome, and the Karoo. Moving on, we are now going to look at cultural heritage. Cultural heritage is an expression of the ways of living developed by a community or a group of people, and it is passed on from generation to generation. It includes our customs, practices, places, objects, artistic expressions, and also values. This type of heritage includes special monuments, buildings, sculptures, paintings, caves, dwellings, music, dance, customs, or anything else that is deemed important because of its history, artistic, or scientific value to us as a nation. We preserve this cultural heritage and recreate historical events and traditions in order to remind ourselves and others of how we used to do things in the past. So basically the traditional dances, the marimbas that we play when our tourists are coming into the country, or one person is moving from one province to another and gets to see other people practicing their cultures, you know, that's what we talk about when we show people how our people or our forefathers used to live, and they're part of the culture or heritage that has brought us to where we are today. Furthermore, cultural heritage might also include natural resources and landforms, but is also formed of things that are symbolic of the creativity and the livelihoods of us as groups of people. We could use an example of Robben Island, which is commonly known as a natural attraction, but because of its historical significance in our lives as South Africans, it may also be included as part of our cultural heritage. In South Africa, we are lucky to have up to 10 World Heritage sites that have been deemed by UNESCO. South Africa is home to these World Heritage sites. 5 of them are cultural, 4 of them are natural, and 1 of them is mixed. Let's look at these natural World Heritage sites. The first being Ukahlamba Drakensberg Park, which we can find in the KwaZulu-Natal province. The second is Mapungubwe National Park, which we can find in the Limpopo province. The third one is the Cape Floral region, which we can find within Eastern Cape and Western Cape. The fourth being the Richardsveld or Ice Cultural and Botanical Landscape, which is in the Northern Cape. We also have the Komani Cultural Landscape, which we can find between Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa in the Northern Cape. Isimangaliso Wetlands Park, formerly known as the Greater St. Lucia Wetland Park that we find in KwaZulu-Natal. Robben Island, which we find just off the shores of Cape Town. Vredefort Dome in the Free State, which is also very significant to our heritage. The Cradle of Humankind, also known as Maropeng, which is found between Northwest and Gauteng province. And lastly, Makonja Mountains, which is the most recent heritage site that we have, deemed by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, that we find in MPUMALANGA province in the Barberton region. I only have one example of these heritage sites. I believe our students, all of you are acquainted with this from level 2, so you can also go on the internet and search and look at different examples of the heritage sites that I have listed on the slides. Now we move on. Ladies and gentlemen, heritage can either be tangible or intangible. Tangible heritage basically means that it's heritage that we can see and touch. Tangible cultural heritage has a physical presence. Most cultural heritage has no physical presence because it has to do with the way we do things. But tangible cultural heritage has a physical presence. For example, a sculpture or a statue of somebody significant from the past. It includes buildings, historic places, monuments, artifacts, which are considered worthy of preservation for the future. They include objects of significance to archaeology, to architecture, to science, technology of a specific group of people or culture. The other form of heritage is intangible heritage. This type of heritage is heritage which we cannot see and touch, but we can only experience. For example, an emotion or a feeling. You feel something, you experience dance. When you sing, it's something that you actually feel rather than something that you can touch and see. It is an experience. It lives in the hearts and the memories of people. If you were part of the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, you can still remember day by day or every little thing that happened back then. That lives in your heart and it also lives in your memory. Can you touch it? No, you cannot, but you can relive it in your head. You can experience it. You can say to your friend, do you remember the time when we were in the stadium when Nkangala scored the first goal of the World Cup? That is intangible. You cannot touch it or see it. Intangible heritage includes traditions or living expressions inherited from our ancestors, passed on to our descendants, such as oral traditions, arts, social practices, rituals, knowledge and practices concerning nature, the universe, food, medicine, heritage, and digital heritage. Ladies and gentlemen, this was just a sum up of Module 7, so we're now going to be moving to Module 8. And in Module 8, we're going to be looking at enhancing heritage through an understanding of heritage. You can turn to page 73 in your textbook, and in this module, what you should know at the end is be able to show sensitivity of other cultures or heritage through knowledge and use heritage in your everyday work. Cultural sensitivity refers to a set of skills that allow you to learn and understand people whose backgrounds are not the same as yours. So meaning if somebody is different from you, is when you are able to go and learn how that person is different from you and what it is that they do different from you and why. This does not mean that you must be an expert in every other person's culture, but it basically means that you have an openness or willingness to learn, to ask questions, to seek understanding, and to demonstrate empathy rather than judging those around you because you do not understand why they do what they do or how they live their life. Cultural sensitivity training is a technique that we use to raise awareness of your own beliefs to others, feelings and culture, and then to raise awareness of other groups' beliefs and feelings and cultures to foster an understanding and improve communication between people from different backgrounds. It can build a bridge between you and a co-worker, you and your employees, you and your organization by giving knowledge and understanding. What can we do? We can go out and learn about the heritage of our neighbors, colleagues, friends, and anyone else who's different from us. We can visit a heritage site or a museum which we would not normally go to, which would provide us with new information rather than the ones that we know. We can keep an open and curious mind at all times in order to make things easy for us to learn and absorb other people's culture and heritage. Research the past in order to understand where others come from and also to understand the history of other people's cultures and why they would deem something as part of their heritage. Using heritage in everyday work. So it is important for us, once we become professionals, that in order to improve knowledge and understanding of heritage, to also include it in the workplace. Cultural diversity in the workplace is when a company hires employees from all sorts of different backgrounds, irregardless of their culture, race, religion, or belief systems. By employing a more culturally diverse workforce, it is often found that employees spend most of their time learning something new or learning about other people's backgrounds. The end result of employing people from different backgrounds with different types of heritage and cultures is that they get to learn new insights about other people and their cultures in turn. And this then helps us to reduce many forms of discrimination, such as racism, sexism, you name them. Tolerance and sensitivity to others are essential, or is essential, if people are to work together harmoniously in one environment. So it is important that we should learn and understand each other in order for us to be able to become tolerant with one another. So that when somebody does something that I'm not used to, I should be able to understand where they come from or their point of view. How can we improve using heritage in our workplace or in our everyday work? We can organize Heritage Day dressing up, which means everybody comes to the workplace dressed up in their own cultural attire or somebody else's different cultural attire, in order to understand where they come from, or in order to see, this is how the Tswana people look, this is how the Venda people look, this is how the Zulu people look, this is how the Swati people dress. We can create attractions to display heritage so that when people visit our areas, they will be able to learn and see elements of our heritage. We can offer to promote tourism at local schools. We can treat cultural heritage with dignity and respect. More of these points can be found in your textbook on page 84. Finally, we're going to look at Module 9, which talks about recognizing your place in a South African heritage context. We are now on page 76. At the end of this lesson, or at the end of this module, you should be able to identify your own family's place in the South African heritage context. You need to be acquainted with some of the personal consequences of your own cultural inheritance, such as language, religion, class, gender, you name them. South Africa is known as a rainbow nation, mainly because our national culture is made up of different cultures. Our national anthem is the only one in the world that has 4 different languages in it: Zulu, Sotho, English, and Afrikaans. Our main cultural groups in this country, they include English people, Afrikaners, the black communities, and the colored people. In level 2, we learned that our country has 11 official languages. These are English, Afrikaans, Ndebele, Sepedi, isiXhosa, Sivenda, Setswana, Southern Sotho, commonly known as Sesotho, isiZulu, Siswati or Swazi, and also Tsonga. Bear in mind that South Africa has other smaller groups of people who speak other languages, but they are related to some of the main languages like Sepedi, Sesotho, or Sizulu, which may not be part of this. We also have sign language as our 11th language. In the previous module, in module 6, we learned that we came into acquaintance with the different agents that shape our heritage. And one of the things that we learned is how to deal with controversial issues. If we can remember, controversy is a state of prolonged public dispute or debate, usually concerning a matter of conflict or opinion or point of view. So a controversial issue is an issue that always has two sides. It's like a coin, as we call it. A coin always has two sides. The major controversial issues, or some of the main controversial issues that we can have in South Africa, especially when we have tourists visiting our nation, is the issue of crime. That's the first thing that somebody would ask. I want to visit your country, but I've heard that the crime rate is so high. Will I be safe if I visit South Africa? Visa requirements. South Africa has recently been known as one of the countries with the most strictest visa requirements, so it is not easy for people to just come and travel to the country, and hence our nation, our government is trying to relax these so that we can have more tourists coming into our nation. Lastly, to name but a few, HIV and AIDS. This is a key, this is one of the major challenges that we have in our country and is a controversial issue. To all students and future tourism professionals, please remember at all times that when you are faced with a controversial question, you must at all times remain impartial. Do not provide your side of the story. Just please put it on the table and explain to the person, yes, crime is high, but our government is trying to assist here and there. Yes, we do have the numbers of HIV/AIDS infected people in the country are high, but our country has been one of the best at managing, HIV and AIDS pandemic in the world. So do not give your own personal viewpoint, but at all times just be in between. You don't want to sound biased. If somebody comes and asks you to compare between two cultures, you should be able to give just points that are positive about both cultures and not say, I prefer culture A over culture B. The consequences of our own cultural inheritance. Remember, where we are born, where we live, the people who are surrounding us, they influence who we become tomorrow. Our individual's family heritage, or our individual family heritage, impacts the choice we make through the influence the family has on us as people when it comes to our culture and also our customs and the way we do things. A person may want to honor his family heritage because he believes it's the way the family does things as a whole. Things is the way the family as a whole thinks about and does things in life. This can include our religious traditions, their work ethic, our political viewpoint, and the way we interact with our community or with other citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our brief lesson. But before we close, please in your textbook, make sure that you consult the following activities to go and just go through everything that we have done together today. Activity 1.16, which is on page 71. Activity 1.17, which is on page 75, Activity 1.18, which is on page 77, and Activity 1.20, which is on page 18. The sources used for this presentation can also be found on the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you and also say to you that if you want to contact me about the subject, you can contact me at my email address, which is otau.inc@gmail.com or tau.o@nkangalafet.edu.za. For further reading of previous question papers, you can go to myqps.weebly.com. If you want to be part of our Google Classroom, you can also just email and inform me on one of the two email addresses that have been provided. That brings us to the end of today's lesson. Thank you.